Hey folks, welcome to another episode of MLR Kickoff. We have an absolute blockbuster show coming up. We will be joined by rugby legend LA Giltinis champion Matt Giteau. We'll also have the professor and his breakdown coming back. What is the scrum? I'm Ron Burgundy. What is the scrum? We'll dig into that with Pete Steinberg. As always, we'll jump into all the action from the weekend. We'll give that a quick rundown and then look at what's coming up ahead. As always, Dan Power, joined by the biggest brain in the rugby universe, the metaverse. We don't have a universe anymore, Pete. We have a metaverse, the professor. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Dan, have you spent any time in the metaverse?
No, I haven't. I actually
I have a client. I have a client. Yeah, I have a client that I'm working with, and they're talking about like doing some stuff in the metaverse. And I'm like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, on Google, what is metaverse? Yeah. So now I know what it is. But it's like, I feel like everyone's kids are in the metaverse, even if we're not in the metaverse.
Yeah, you haven't made enough money in the real verse, so now they're going to the metaverse to make more money on stuff that I don't understand. I'm just a surly old man now, Pete. But rugby-wise, I tell you what, there were some great games on the weekend. There's a few surprises early on in the season, isn't there?
Well, yeah. I mean, it reminds me of, I mean, I would say the early days, but it actually reminds me of all the years of MLR where pretty much every game was competitive. Even the games that kind of like you look at the final score, like the Free Jacks 41 and Old Glory 25. That was a close game, and the Free Jacks had to have a couple of pretty special moments from Wacko to be able to pull that away. So all of these games were competitive. They were down to the end. There were like close referee calls. There were breaks. There were heartbreaks. Man, it was an exciting weekend of rugby.
Yeah, heartbreaks in Dallas as they almost christened that new stadium.
Oh my gosh, 2 weeks in a row.
Oof, that one was. It was great to watch as a fan, unless you're a Jackals fan. Then it was probably very difficult to watch. But who's been the surprise packet for you after the first 3 weeks?
Well, I mean, I would say the last 2 weeks, it has to be Dallas. I mean, Dallas has been like not only competitive, but in winning positions going into the end of the game. And after that first week, didn't we all feel like, oh, this is going to be like a really long season of blowouts? And so I think their performances have to be the biggest surprise so far. What about you, Dan? What's the biggest surprise?
So I'm not going to go with an 0-3 team. I'm actually going to go with one that's 3-0 in the Seattle Seawolves. They've actually looked really, really good. I've got to give credit to the roster up there, Alan Clark, Pate, Tulivuka, the GM up there, good old Pate. And you know, I was a little unsure. Is probably the way, because on paper there's some great players up there, and you always thought they're going to be competitive. But to come out 3-0, I've been really impressed with Seattle.
No, and I think the I'm not sure if we're ready to go there, Dan, but I actually think the San Diego Seattle game was probably the best game of the weekend, not just because it was close and it came down to the end, but because it was a back and forth game of high quality. I actually thought that was a really, really high-quality game. I mean, there were lots of really exciting games. I mean, the Atlanta-New York game was kind of nuts, right, with New York pulling that one out. So I think, I can completely understand Seattle, but I am 100% on board with the Seawolves, although their defense, interestingly enough, was not very strong this
I was going to say, what was your most interesting match of the week? But I think you just gave it to us there. San Diego, Seattle, bit of a nail biter down to the end there. Poor old San Diego, they're banged up, aren't they? They've got the injury bug early on. They lost a bunch of players. So,
and they had that problem last year, right? They lost players early, so they've got some real problems. Ryan Mattias got hurt in that game. But I thought like what was really interesting about the Seattle-San Diego game was actually how San Diego attacked the seawall. That was really interesting to me, because what they did is early on, like that first Joe Peterson try is exactly what you do against a pressure defense, right? The little chip over the top, he regathered it, he scored. That slows down that defensive line of Seattle, and that's what gave San Diego the space to play. But a couple of really outstanding individual performances by Seattle. Ricard Hadding had an amazing game. Lepetti had an amazing game. I mean, it was really, really phenomenal. But, the San Diego stayed in there even though they're beaten up. I mean, I think that San Diego team, we said this last year, right? If they could get healthy, they can play with anyone. They're still playing with people and they're not healthy, but, they had a couple of guys on the bench that I think, get called up from the local club game. They're quality players, but they're not professionals. You can't survive
that
like
gap
that
is only going to get wider and wider, isn't it? The club rugby to the MLR gap. We saw in year one, there was kind of a fluid transition. Players coming up and down. Some people actually doing quite well at MLR, but I feel as the years have ticked on, playing D1 or worse men's club rugby is just no longer sufficient to handle MLR.
Yeah, I think that's right. So a couple of things I thought was really interesting. So neither team had great tackle percentages, and Seattle in particular were at 73%, and they only had one dominant tackle, and that was Ross Neal. That was the only dominant tackle that they had, and so San Diego in their forwards were really able to go forward. They were able to play smart. When you've got really good decision makers like Joe Peterson and Marnonu, you can find space in the in the defense to be able to play. And I think that's really what they did. But like the decision making, Dan, at the end of that game, like it had me pulling my hair out. There's 3 minutes to go, and Seattle up by 3 points, and JP Smith kicks it away. Right, just give it to the forwards, hold it on for 3 minutes. There's a breakdown. I think there's a turnover. There's a penalty. I think Marnonu, gets the penalty. They kick it down. They've got a line out inside the 22, and they throw it over the top to Marnonu, like on the last play of the game, who isn't able to catch it. It's a knock on. And I'm just like, if we know anything in Major League Rugby over the last couple of years, it's like the easiest way to score is to catch the ball, drive it in, and get over the line. And I think they were just a little bit too excited. I mean, to be fair dues, they turned down the penalty to tie it up. They could have tied it up, right? But they turned that down, and they go on and they go for the try. But man, decision making in the last couple of minutes, that's what makes coaches
guys
great.
In that game that were sort of outside squad players in season one that have stuck around and been squad players for a very long time for San Diego, but like stalwarts for Almback. Chris Terori from season one has basically been thrust into sort of a starting blindside flanker role. And then Derek Broussard is back, and he's been on the bench the past couple of weeks. So, I mean, some of these guys are still getting opportunities, which is honestly, it's really good that, like, hey, they're at this, they've continued to develop themselves, but that they're able to fill this role still.
Yeah. Did you say Terori?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, reminds me of a great song. When a big number 6 scores a try under the sticks, that's Terori. Sing it, Pete.
Well, Chris had, I think he had 11 tackles. So very, very active around the field. But Matt Moulds had 19 tackle attempts, he had 3 misses from the hooker. And that's someone that stepped in again for Malcolm, who was injured. I thought he did really well. And I'm really enjoying Ben Mitchell. He had the most ball carries except for Tamalau at number 8 in that pack, and he's such a good ball carry. And, of course, that's what seems to be a bit of a controversial opportunity when he got the ball over the line but lost the ball, and there was some discussion about whether it should have been a try or not. But, there are these little law pieces where downward pressure is not sufficient. If you're carrying the ball and you get over the line, downward pressure is sufficient if you're diving on a loose ball. And he definitely lost that ball on the way down. So I think JP Doyle, perfect positioning, didn't need to go to the TMO because he saw exactly what happened. And, that's how good that game was. It's just that little bit right there is what determined that Seattle won that game. Thought it was a really entertaining game, but there were so many entertaining games, Dan. So many entertaining games back and forth. here's a question for you. So we've said, what's your biggest surprise? What is your biggest disappointment so far?
Probably Nola.
After week 3,
unfortunately, 0-3, playing at home, haven't looked that good. But
yeah,
really, they've been close.
Well, I mean, I think they're not that bad, right? It was a really close game. I thought, Sam Malcolm coming back at fly half for Toronto just makes such a huge difference for them. But no, they're going to find themselves remember what they did last year? They were very inconsistent at the start, and they had to go on a run, and they pretty much went on that run. I can see that. For me, and this is going to be really harsh because I don't think they've played poorly, but I think Utah starting 0-3 has been a disappointment in terms of their results. The West is absolutely stacked, right? So you look at all of Utah's losses and you're like, well, they've lost all against good teams, right? Like they've all lost good teams, but that's all you have in the West. And it also means that it's a harder pathway for an 0-3 team in the West to get back than it is in the East, I think. And so it's going to be tough for Utah to find their way back. I think they need a solution at 10. I think they're struggling there. So it'll be interesting to see what they do and if they make any changes going into next week.
So I love the professor. Asks me a question, lets me say 4 words, and then speaks for 10 minutes answering his own question. Great stuff. Great stuff as always.
I'm helping your dollar per word ratio go up. Dollar per word ratio.
I love it. All right. You know who else I love? I love Australian rugby legends, and there are none bigger than the man we have joining us right now. His name was, it was probably one of the biggest signings we had in MLR for last year. He joined his longtime teammate, Adam Ashley Cooper, in Los Angeles, delivered a championship to the city of Los Angeles. And I thought that was it. I thought he was going to hang it up, but he's come back for one more run. Excited to have him on the show. Wallaby legend and now Giltinis legend, Matt Giteau. All right, joining us now is LA Giltinis fly half and returning champion, Matt Giteau. Gits, appreciate you taking time and joining the show. Firstly, how was the off season? You got to spend some time back home, but back in LA now. What did you and the family get up to during the break?
We had a 2-week hotel quarantine on the way back. The kids then, they went into school. COVID was pretty tight back in Australia. I think it was just a little bit behind America. So we stayed pretty local, just enjoyed getting back into the normality for them, normality of things for them, like schooling, normal dinners and all that type of stuff, just falling back into, normal life.
Now, you've got a law named after you in rugby. Were you able to pull a couple of strings to get a better hotel on the way back in, or was it whatever they gave you?
No one answered. I asked about that law. It didn't really help. No, it was, I suppose when we signed to come over, we knew that was going to be there. So that was something we're prepared for. And the 6 months that I spent in LA, I would do another 2 weeks easily, for the experience.
Times have changed, Gits. Quade can't get a citizenship. You can't get a good hotel. Do they forget what you guys did for, the green and gold? Just terrible stuff.
Well, actually, I think Quade's a citizen now.
Yeah, he did. He's fine. He did. I think he made his comeback, kicked the game winner, and they're like, okay, you can join now, I guess.
Yeah, you're worthy,
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about the experience of going to LA for the first time. Obviously, most people who watch this show are going to know who you are. There's a story of Matt Giteau, Brumbies, Wallabies, Toulon. What was it about LA that attracted you and got you to come over and enjoy these last few years of your career in Los Angeles?
Well, initially, I think the relationship I have with the GM, Adam Fryer, Stephen Halls, was also he was the forwards coach last year. He's now the head coach this year. Adam Ashley Cooper was a guy that I played with for so long. He obviously had already agreed to go to Austin. COVID hit. The owner, Adam Gilchrist, bought another team based out of Los Angeles, and he first proposed me with the idea. And then I knew there's other guys that were on the coaching staff, Darren Coleman, also, as I said, the GM being Adam Fryer. And it just, the more I spoke to him, the more enticing it became to live in LA, like an unbelievable city, but also to start a new franchise, the foundations for hopefully, a successful franchise.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. When you get here, when you sign the contract and you get to LA, you've grown up in an established rugby playing country. You've played at, storied clubs all around the world. Was it a little daunting coming into something that was just brand new? And you're like, geez, I'm actually laying the foundations for what this club is going to be like.
No, not daunting. That was the exciting part, I think, to hopefully set up and live by a set of core values and rules that as a club, when new guys come in, they feel what we're about. They know what we're about as a club. So that side of things was exciting. And also seeing the way the club grew. When we first got here, we didn't have a gym. So each week you'd see a squat rack put in or, another bike put in, or just slowly see the club starting to build and come together at the same time that we were playing in a competition. It was just something totally new, refreshing. And being in LA, I was under no real illusions that we were going to make a big footprint in this city. For us, it was just to come in, be successful, hopefully set up the club for many more years to come.
Yeah, Jimmy Kimmel still didn't give you guys credit for winning the championship. Gave everyone else credit, but we'll get there with Jimmy Kimmel eventually. When did you know you guys were onto something special? Like camp in Maui, you get back. Obviously, you come out of the gates last year like a house on fire, best team in the comp by far. But internally, when did you guys have a good feel that, hey, we're going to have a really good run at the championship here?
Oh, I think early on, you don't know exactly how you stack up to other teams, especially a new competition for me. So it was just from training. I think the camaraderie that we developed quite early. We were lucky to have that opportunity in Maui to get to know each other and see what everyone's about, their reasons for why they're here, who they play for. Those type of things are quite important, I think, not just from a rugby sense, but also getting to know their families and all that. So it took time, but I think just as the season unraveled, there were times when we came off the back of a bad loss and we had to re-find ourselves, find what we're about, find different ways to play the game. But yeah, I think for us the final was a bit of a dream game for us and a dream result. I think we played our best game as a side in the final, and that's what you need to do.
Yeah, for you personally, obviously you said knew Adam Fryer and Hoylesy and DC and those guys. What were some of the things that were their expectations for you coming into the season? And then internally, what were some of your personal expectations that you wanted to achieve yourself coming into last year?
Individually, just to add to the team. I think when you're an older player, there's always those questions whether you're dropping in form. And, I don't know. I think just for me, I'm always trying to prove myself, prove to the team that I'm here for the right reasons, not for any individual accolades, but for us as a team to get better, see young kids develop, any local talent then can go play for the Eagles. For me, they're the driving factors that I work hard for and that I strive for. And I think the biggest conversation that I had with Darren Coleman, because the last time he was involved with me was well back at the Brumbies, where I didn't really want to give anyone opportunities. So anytime I was there to play, I was there to play, and not so much trying to develop other players, but trying to develop myself and get better. So I had more of a selfish outlook on how I prepared. So his first question to me was, how often do you want to play? How do you feel about resting games, letting other guys through, developing them? And I said, that's what I'm all for. For me, if I don't play any games, if I just close out games, the last 10, 15 minutes, I'm happy as long as a club we're successful and we achieve the goals that we're after. And I think that put his mind at ease. And then from there, everything was fine.
Yeah, you talk about that time back at the Brumbies way back when. I'm sure you've seen it a few times, that photo of you and Harrison Goddard. He looks like he's about 12, and you're at the Brumbies at the height of your career playing Super Rugby for Australia. How many surreal moments like that are you just enjoying now at the back end of the career, like seeing that photo and then getting to line up with a guy like Harrison Goddard, who's pretty early on in his career and still finding his way in the world of professional rugby?
Yeah, I think there's certain guys that I'd met throughout the year that they said, it was an honour to play against you. obviously watched you when I was back at school or I was 10. Those things aren't so flattering. So those ones you can easily let go. But I remember Godsey Harrison before the first game. He was like, "Oh, have a look at this, Brett. Like, look at this photo." And it was a photo that everyone's seen, where it was me after a Brumbies game, and I took a photo with Godsey. And it was just before we were about to play that first game. And it helped me so much just relax and enjoy the moment and play as hard as I can to get him a win, because I knew after the game it'd be so cool to get another photo where we actually played together. That's obviously what happened. But, yeah, that was really special.
I know it's probably like a mixed thing at the end of the career, but I did enjoy how quick the opposition were to find you and swoop and get photos after the game. They're like, I'm never going to get this opportunity again. I played against a legend. Everyone wrapping arms. So I'm kind of like, that's they've gone into the game almost thinking, I got to get my camera and I got to find Matt Giteau and Adam Ashley Cooper is on full time. So I get the photo.
Let them know how old they are. We're trying to be polite. So.
How many selfies did you have racked up in the last year? Probably more than you've had in your career with opposition players.
Yeah, but I think that's part of why you're here. And I think for me, it is quite special that you're held in some type of regard from opposition players. So those types of things are quite special, yeah.
All right, let's go retrospectively quickly over the career here. Everyone always likes to ask, the toughest opponent, toughest team, all that sort of stuff. But, mate, who was the scariest? That's what I always want to know. And everyone says when they're playing, they're like, everyone's man, everyone bleeds. I can deal with it. But there's always got to be a player where you saw them in the roster and you're like, oh, God, not that guy.
When I first came in, I was lucky to be 80 kilos. I mean, I'm not big now. I'm about 86 kilos. But that 6 kilos is it took me 20 years to build up. So when I first came in, I hadn't done a great deal of weights, and you're playing against big centres that were 110, 115. Tana Umaga, I remember the 2004 was the first time I started against the All Blacks, and he was performing the haka, and he was just standing there, and obviously he was leading it as well. But when he was looking, he had this ability that made you feel like he was just talking to you, and I was almost like, well, what did I do wrong? But I remember that moment in particular, and that was a long time ago. But I still remember that one actually being not so much fearful, but just like I didn't want to make eye contact with him in case I got him angry. But then once the game kicks off, you fall into your natural habits and try and tackle and play as hard as you can. But yeah, I remember that moment in particular.
All right, who was the biggest Jekyll and Hyde? Best guy off the field, but an absolute pest on the field.
Oh. Gee, there's lots of them. I think Skulkberger he's an unreal guy off the field. First one I have a beer with, but once you're on the field, he used to play for the Springboks. He was just a beast. And I think because he was a back rower, he would always intentionally put a lot of pressure on your fly halves, your number 10. So, he was definitely one guy that I got along with amazing off the field, but on the field, he was just a different person.
All right. Favorite non-Australian teammate that you played with throughout your career?
Oh, wow. I think more interesting, not favorite, because I got so many guys that I've got a lot of respect for and I get along with. But the most interesting to talk to and get into his brain, Johnny Wilkinson.
Yeah.
Before a game, I could sit down with him at dinner, just ask him little things about how hard he would train, why he would do certain things. And I just found it fascinating the way he operated and the way he thought. But then he could perform at the level he could. It was, he was fascinating and a great fella too.
I'm surprised he's not more involved in the coaching side of the sport with just how sharp. Like I've heard stories, actually, some of them from like your time in Toulon, where you're like, his preparation was just ridiculous. Like the guy was just immaculate, meticulous almost, how he would dissect things, and to the point of like learning fluent French, just so he could function in that Toulon environment. So I'm always interested to see that he's kind of not a bigger figure in rugby, especially in England. I know he's still involved, but not at the level that you would think a guy like that would be involved.
Yeah, I think there's so much more to coaching, though, than knowing opposition or being able to implement skills. there's so much work that goes in behind the scenes, cutting clips, getting set for meetings, all those small things which take time. Maybe he doesn't have the interest for. I know I don't. So I love rugby and I would love to stay involved, but I just don't think, from watching the way Adam Ashley Cooper and Stephen Halls prepare now and the amount of time it takes to get ready for little meetings, PowerPoints and all that, it's just, I don't know. I just don't think it's something that appeals to me. So Johnny potentially could be the same.
Same way, yeah. All right, your top 3 Giltinis teammates that you'd never met before the season last year. There were 3 guys.
Johnny Ryberg.
Oh, Johnny Ryberg. What a character.
Oh, what's he called? The eyeballs with muscles or something. So
the quadriceps with eyeballs.
Yeah, there's Johnny is just a good man, good value, funny. His accent, his little Texan accent, I just enjoy that. Christian Rodriguez, he's also like good value. He was a guy that when I first went to Maui, went out of his way to make me feel welcome. We would lift, do weights together, and small things like that make a big difference when you want to have an impact on a group or fit in. So he was he was great. And you've got, like, I'd like to call them the Buzz crew, but you'd say Luke Burton, Angus Cottrell, and Billy Meeks. I knew who they were, but never met them until we'd signed at the Giltinis, and I got a really good friendship with all of them. Yeah,
Meeks is just on another level. Like the social media, everything. It's just
Billy. Billy does Billy things. That's all we say.
It is crazy. I've never seen someone so comfortable in their skin at such a young age.
It's great.
He's Billy Meeks, and he loves the fact that he's Billy Meeks in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, mate. Is this it? I know you said you live in the moment, but is this it, you think?
Well, yeah. I said this last year, so I don't want to keep saying, because then everyone says, well, you did say that last year. I think for me, this last break, you're talking about what we did in that break, and a lot of the training by myself, getting prepared, the weights, the fitness, all that type of stuff, it's becoming harder and harder to push yourself and get motivated individually. Mm-hmm. So as soon as I get into the team environment, I'm great, but usually I've been fine training by myself, whereas this last off-season, I struggled a little bit more. So whether that's telling me that time's up, then potentially it is. But as I say, I like to live in the moment and just like to enjoy everything that's happening, not just from a rugby sense point of view, but also with the family. But at the moment, I still really enjoy competing with the boys, lifting, the camaraderie, the jokes, and living in LA. So I don't know if I really answered that.
No, you actually answered it perfectly, because you just never know. You didn't close the door; you just left it a little crack. But good luck getting an outfit better than last year too. You and Swoop in the Sluggos coming in on the little scooters, so you've got that to kind of work on and build on this year as well.
Yeah, exactly, it's always good to have goals.
The Gilly Girl outfits, the Sluggos. I mean, yeah, I loved it. I loved all of it, mate. Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure having you on the show. It's been great to watch you last year, and it'll be great to watch you go around this year as well. Your impact over here can't be understated, and I think I've said it a few times. First round Hall of Fame. They love that term over in the US. So you'll be in that arena yourself here shortly when you do end up calling it a day. Good luck for the season, and good luck with the kids in school.
Yeah, that's the big one. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yes.
There you go, Pete. And again, like crazy. He's still getting it done at such a high level. Just an amazing human being, first and foremost, rugby aside. But then on the rugby field, off the rugby field, everything he's doing, the experience he brings to LA and the league as well has just been unreal.
Well, what I love about the Matt Giteau story is it's all by choice, right? He's not here because he has to keep playing rugby. He's here because he wants to play rugby. He wants to be part of this, like helping grow the game in the States. And I mean, he's just such a wonderful player. Like, in every sport, you have those players that seem to have time, and he seems to have time. And LA need him. Like, with Cardi out, we've seen Burton play. Doesn't quite do it for them. Hopefully after the bye week, they'll be able to come out. I said before, the West is going to be stacked, and LA's not going to run away with it this year, but Matt Giteau is going to be an important part of this.
Yeah, important part of the team also is their set piece. They were one of the best at the set piece. Their line out was a strength last year, especially early in the year. The scrum, well, the man tightening the screws there is Alex Corbusario, the Lions legend, English legend, who now calls the USA home. But Pete, for a novice like me, we joked last week about my time on the side of the scrum. What is a scrum?
So, we've talked a little bit about the idea of a accidental infringement leads to a scrum. And so there's a couple of things to help people understand what's going on so you can see what happens. So in a scrum, the ball gets put in by one side. They put it and it gets hooked back by the hooker, right? So that's the name of the hooker, and the hooker channels it back.
Folks, no giggling. It's a real thing.
It is a real thing. And so the trick is, right, is the hooker, because of the way the scrum binds, is the hooker on the side that they're putting in can get their foot on it first. So that hooker's always going to strike. Okay, so that's the strike. That's when they kick back with their foot. And so there's a couple of things that you want to look at in the scrum. First of all, whoever wins the hit, right? So when the referee says set, that allows the front rows to come together. So that's the prop and the hooker and the prop. And so when the referee says set, you want to see who wins that hit, because whoever wins that hit probably has an advantage in the scrum. Lots of physics. I'm sure, Stats Boy would want to dive in here, but there's lots of physics and angles and levers. But basically, if you win the hit, you're in a better position.
One of the things that annoys me.
Okay. So one thing is
that annoys me about usage of the term scrum outside of our sport is that as you're explaining this, it's a system, right? It's a system. It's not a brawl or anything.
A melee. It's not a melee.
I think there's a little bit lost in translation, because you can have a media scrum, which is just a mass of people converging into one area. So everyone gets upset when they watch Sunday Night Football and Collingsworth goes, "Oh my God, it's like they got us that." And this is not Chris Collingsworth's voice. So
this is some random,
they're on the scrum,
American accent.
The weird, we could get into the physics, but one of this weird rule that they're talking about that they're implementing in the Six Nations is forcing hookers to implement a break foot so that it limits axial loading. But everything I've seen has still shown that axial loading is continuing.
So Dan, this is one of these things where I thought we wanted to make this more accessible. And there are actually papers written on the stuff that Stats Boy is talking about. So there's a lot of levers and angles and pushes, but there's three things I think, if you're not sure what's going on, right, there are three things you want to look for the scrum, and there are the three things that the referee looks for. Yeah. The first one is the hit. The referee doesn't want anyone to go early when he says set, right? Just like Dan, perfect Dan, almost like you once, the number 6, as we heard last week. You want to make sure that the hit is fair and that both teams come together. The second thing that the referee is looking for is he's looking for what's called the bind. And the bind, let's see if Dan can do this, is the props. That's how they hold each other and how they grab hold of each other. So the props come together and they reach out towards and they get their arms ready to bind. Okay. And what the referee is looking for is elbows up. He doesn't want to see anyone pulling it down. All right. So you can't pull it down. So you want to see the elbows up. That's the second thing to look for. And then the third thing to look for is, are people driving straight? So what you can't do is you can't drive on an angle. Thanks, Dan, for your knowledge. All right. And so often when you see the scrum turn, which is called wheeling, right, you will often see a penalty that comes out of that. And what the referee is looking for is who is not driving straight. So 3 things to look for in the scrum: the hit, okay, the bind, okay, and then are they square? We'll say, are they driving square? Are they driving straight? And if you look for those 3 things, at the very least, you're looking at the same thing that the referee is looking at. And so all of those things if they have a fair hit, if the binds are good and they stay square, what should happen is the team that puts the ball in should win it, right? It's only when some other stuff that's going on, especially at this level, that someone else would win it. But hopefully that gives people some things to look for as they go, as they look at the scrum.
Best scrum in Major League Rugby. Who is it as of today?
So I think it depends a little bit on the personnel. So I would say maybe right now it's Atlanta if they have their starting front row, right? Mm-hmm. I think that Atlanta probably has the best scrum with their starting front row. And as Stats Boy said, I'm making it pretty simple. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens with the second rows that bind onto the prop that make sure they're doing really well. There's a whole bunch of different systems that people can do to make sure that those binds are strong and they're transferring their push through the props. And so I think Atlanta probably have some of the better scrummaging second rows. They've got some good size behind there. And like, as I said, there's physics. So size actually matters.
Statistically, Stats Boy, who's got the best scrum? Can you look that up real quick? I'll fill for you. I got a feeling.
You're going to fill about the scrum. You're going to fill about the scrum. Yeah, please fill about the scrum.
So I'm playing. No, I'm not doing the story.
No, so you're a tall guy, right? So you're like, how tall are you? 6'4"?
Yeah, and that's crazy because whenever people ask, what position did you play, and I say I played in the backs, they're just like, no, because I'm reasonably big.
I always thought Dan was a second row for like ages because he's just because I never saw Dan play. For the record, I never saw Dan play, so I was like,
there's probably some old chess videos of him playing. But this is actually so one of the interesting things about the scrum is what really leads to this concept that rugby is all shapes and sizes, right? So you can be 6'5", right, and 230 pounds, and you can be 5'10" and 260 pounds. You can have a very different body shape, but because of the scrum, you need those two different body shapes, right? And so the scrum and having the scrum remain an important part of the game and remain competitive while still being safe, right, is really important for the game to be for all shapes and sizes. And so the scrum's really important in continuing, in rugby continuing to be a place for all shapes.
So statistically, you're not going to see really who's the most dominant because winning a scrum just means getting the ball out, right? Mm-hmm. So, but statistically, I can definitely tell you who is not good. And that is Dallas, who has conceded 15 scrum penalties. And, I mean, the first 2 weeks of Seattle's scrums were very bad.
Yeah, they had no one in their scrum.
They are the second worst.
Well, yeah, I mean, they went uncontested. They lost their tight
as of right now, statistically, they are the second worst scrummaging team in the league with 12 penalties conceded. And then I want to say it's New York and San Diego are tied at 7 scrum penalties conceded for third worst scrums in the league.
So just for the people that are following along, those scrum penalties are probably either engaging too early, not staying square, or taking it down. Those are most often the scrum penalties, and that's what the referee looks for. And so Stats Boy is making a good point here that you don't normally win the opposition scrum, but you'll give away a penalty before they win it, and that's kind of why penalties are important.
Cool. All right, let's take a look at this weekend.
Probably about as much as we want to get.
Yeah.
Probably about as much as we want to have on scrums, Dan. Yeah. I think we're good.
Iceberg, we got the tip. If you want to Titanic it, by all means, get on YouTube and go as deep as you want. All right. Let's see. Kicking off 26th of February at 4 p.m. No Friday night games this weekend, which hurts my heart. But hopefully some more coming up. This one, Saturday at 4, Toronto on the road against DC. DC 0-3. Toronto coming off a win down there in New Orleans. This one on the Rugby Network, Pete. And then, TSN up in Canada.
I'm calling this game this weekend, Dan, so I'm going to let it go. Okay. But DC showed us some things in that New York game that we hadn't seen. A young team. This should be a really, really interesting game. And
New England game.
Sorry?
New England game.
Sorry, New England. That's what New England game. Thank you. One of those East Coast teams. So it should be an interesting game. Toronto pulling out that close one against NOLA. So I'm looking forward to calling it.
Oh yeah, I feel like DC obviously they're due for a win. They're 0-3, but Toronto took a lot out of that win on the road again because it's Toronto. They'll play the first half of the season on the road. I'll go the Arrows. I just think they've got a little bit more in the tank, a little bit more firepower. I like their pack. Cole Bailey had one of his best games in MLR, definitely his best game for the Arrows on the weekend. And then Sammy Malcolm, mate, just that kid just makes such a difference to that side. Keep the scoreboard ticking over, and he's a great leader, moves them around the park a lot better when he's out there in that 10 jersey. So I'll go Toronto. Moving on, Saturday night, it is Austin at Seattle. This one could be the game of the round. It's on the Rugby Network, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Are you calling this one too?
I'm not. I have the FS2 game later that night.
So San Diego, Houston. Okay, I'll remember that to leave you out of that one. All right, then tell me, Austin, Seattle, undefeated in the West.
This is really interesting. This could determine a playoff spot, right? These are two teams that are going to be in there. It's going to be a great test for Austin and then high-powered attack. Not as good against Utah this past weekend, going up against Seattle. I'm going to give Seattle the edge, but only because they're at home. Them being 3-0, I think there might be some atmosphere at Starfire. So I think Seattle get the edge, but only just.
Now I'll give you the inside scoop. I'm actually going to Austin this week. I can't tell you what I'm going to be doing. It's a top secret, but let me tell you, the Gilgronis will come out firing after my visit to Austin this week.
Oh, if you're going to Austin, then, sorry, Seattle blow them out. Sorry, with that
Austin by 70. You watch this. It's going to be me, Mark O'Keefe, and Julian Dominguez. We've got a 45-minute session at the tanning salon, and then I'm just taking the boys on a walk along the riverfront and just going to download every little bit of information I've ever had from my career. It's like, boom, pump it into them. You watch. It's going to be a great performance on the weekend. Austin by plenty. All right, moving on, kicking off at the same time, New York at Dallas. This could be a little trip-up game here for the undefeated New York going into 0-3 Dallas. But as we saw in the last 2 weeks, Pete, they are not an 0-3 team. I said that they'll go winless this year. I'm pulling that statement back. I was wrong, Dallas fans. You will win games this year. I am sure if the effort that you've shown in the last 2 weeks continues, you will get wins this year. But who are you going in this one?
So I'm going to go with New York. I think Dallas will make it competitive. I think the challenge that Dallas has, which is not unusual for an expansion franchise, is depth, right? We're seeing that they're not able to close out the games. And if you can't close out the games, it's because your bench isn't as strong. It would be exactly what you would expect for the expansion franchise not to have that depth. And I think they're going to keep it close, but I think New York will pull it out because their bench will be stronger. I mean, look, like they're pulling All Blacks off the bench for New York, right? So you know that they're going to come in and that last 20 minutes is going to be strong.
Yeah, geez, that's a luxury, isn't it, Andy Ellis? That last 20.
Yeah, just like an All Black great on the bench if you need him, right?
The last 20 in Major League Rugby just gets quite hectic. I was watching my son play basketball on the weekend, and he's 13, and they're up by 6 points, and the other team starts playing frantic to try to catch them. Instead of calming it down, they just feed off that enthusiasm and start playing crazy as well. And then you've got two teams just going mental for 2 minutes. And sometimes I feel like MLR gets a little bit that way, where the team in the lead, instead of just calming things down, seems to just feed into the intensity and go nuts as well, where Andy Ellis, seen it all, done it all, steps on the field and be like, take a breath, we're going to relax, kicking the corners, good kick chase, let's make our tackles, and close this out. So I think New York will do that and just turn the screws in the last 20 on Dallas. All right, 9 p.m. Saturday night. It's in Houston. We're down at Aviva Stadium. Pete Steinberg on FS2, the big dog on the national game. man, San Diego, they're 2-1, so they're not in trouble here if they lose this game. They have the same record as Houston, both teams at 2-1. We mentioned Seattle-Austin could determine a playoff, both these sides as well with this game. One will go to 3-1 and continue to push forward. The other drops to 500, and you're not out of it by any stretch, but boy, it makes it interesting because of these win-losses. This could come down to tiebreakers, Pete, at the end of the Western Conference.
Yeah, I think the West is going to do that. And I think this is a great game. I love to see this. It's a test for Houston. It's a test for San Diego. Some of this really is like, who can San Diego put on the field this week? Right?
Yeah.
Like it's going to be about who's healthy and who can play.
I agree. I won't be logging in my picks on Super Brew, which went 6 out of 6 on the weekend. Suck that, scary Larry. Yeah.
Who's number one on Super Brew? Who's number one, Dan?
Not me. I'm 4th. Hang on, I'll pull it up right now and check.
I can never, for some reason, I'm so Super Brew naive that I can never even find the listing.
You plummeted, Pete.
Dan, I have to tell you, I pick on Tuesday, because if I don't pick on Tuesday, I'm so busy I forget. So I don't look at any. I just pick, and then I can't even remember who I pick.
I don't even
Aggie 99 is number 1. It's Travis Norman. He's a SaberCats fan. He looks very dashing. His photo. Got the tuxedo.
There's still a chance for people to sign up on Super Brew and find the MLR Kickoff.
I did. So my win percentage this week went up, but I still went way down. So that means everyone else.
I think there's a lot of people like Dan, just like Dan, who got really, really lucky without any knowledge of the game and was able to go 6-0 through guesswork. That's what I think.
Luck gets you 3 and 6. Skill and just a deep understanding. I should take over the professor's breakdown. Surely we have a subject I can break down.
I said 0-3 on our Twitter, not our Twitter, on our text thread, and I was talking about something else, and Dan was trying to rub it in my face.
Oh, I thought you went 0-3. I'm like, dude, I'm 3-3. I'm loving life at the moment. But yeah.
Okay, so who do you have in the San Diego Houston game?
Mate, again, I would love to see a roster, and this pick will probably change once I see the roster. I'll go Houston, just the fact that they're at home. I would imagine that they did not read into that win. They'd probably be pretty disappointed with their performance against Dallas, right, with the exception of that last 15, 20 minutes. So I think Heineke Meyer and Pote Human would have given them a pretty tough week at training. So they focus on this game.
Those are the best things. The best things that are poor is to play poorly and win, because you can learn all the lessons, but you don't have any of the costs. So I agree with 100%. You. I think that's an experienced coaching staff that will make that.
I know you're just chomping to talk here, and you can't because you're calling this game. So we'll move on. New England at LA, standalone game on Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. This one on the Rugby Network. Who you got here? This one, we're going to get into our most interesting match of week 4. This is actually going to be my most interesting match of week 4. So
I agree with you. I think it is. I think it is the most interesting matchup. I think we're going to, because we don't know what LA is yet. Like you've said, what's their scrum? They got the week off, right? Can they get their scrum right? Can they fix their lineout? Their lineout was the best in the league last year, and they've really struggled. And this New England team, that's a test. It's a long way for them to go, but I really, really like that New England team. And I don't know, maybe Ben Wacker's the player of the season so far. I mean, that guy has so much magic in his hands and feet. He is just playing lights out.
Yeah. There's rumors going around that he's turning water into Boston lager on the docks there down in Boston. And, he's going to sleep and 3 days later rising again. It's just crazy what's happening up in Boston. It's going mad. I'm expecting to see him on a celebrity boat on Wicked Tuna next, just because the area's gone nuts for Buddy Walker.
So this is the interesting match of the weekend. So let's dive just a little bit deeper into this. And for me, New England comes in. They're playing some good stuff. They were under the cosh though, right, against DC. DC looked really good and played some good stuff, held on to the ball. And in that second half, New England just showed the killer instinct, right? Turnovers, they were able to take advantage. But I don't know how strong this New England defense is against DC, they seem to struggle in that point of contact. If you win the point of contact against LA and LA are on the front foot, then it's a real problem. So I think that point of contact is going to be really important. The New England defense needs to be physical with LA, not let those LA forwards, those ball runners, like people like Angus Cottrell and Dave Dennis, go forward and get over the game line. Because if they can do that, LA can play faster than anyone else, right? With Goddard at 9 and if Giteau's playing 10, they'll just tear them apart. So New England have to have that edge in the scrum. They have to have that edge in the line out, and they want to have that physicality. But what New England showed is that long range scoring that LA also shows. So I think what you're going to see in this game is a lot of tight stuff, a lot of play in the middle of the field, both teams kind of feeling each other out, and then an error either defensively or offensively, and the other team going 15 meters and scoring. And it's going to be who can play and hold on to the ball, who can not make those errors for longer, and that'll be the team that wins. It's going to be an amazing matchup.
It is, and I'm going to go a little deep and weird here, but winning a championship is probably one of the more difficult things to do in any sport. Defending it is harder. I would say, and this is just a guess, that Adam Fryer, Steve Hoyles, Adam Ashley Cooper, the whole staff sat down in the off-season and said, how do we win this championship again? What do we need to do to win this championship again? And I think the blueprint looks vastly different to what it did last year. They came out of the gates after that camp in Maui. They blew everyone out of the park. They just exceeded expectations of how good we thought LA were going to be. I think they're going to be a little bit more strategic this year. I think they will run home stronger. Like last year, we saw them kind of beat up, and they didn't run home as, there was some question marks. I mean, they were still dominant, but there were some question marks, but they got it done. I think this year, Steve Hoyles is going to have, having some losses early on, like the Houston loss. I don't think losing this game really hurts them in terms of where they're going.
Okay.
I think New England can upset them here.
All right, so I have a question for you. How good a coach is Darren Coleman?
Phenomenal.
All right, so not having Darren Coleman as the head coach is a loss.
Do you know what makes DC such a good coach? Is how much he empowers his
No doubt. So Steve Hoyles, I think, is an excellent coach, but he's now the head coach. It's a different job, right? And he has to grow into that role. Right. If you say Darren Coleman's a phenomenal a phenomenal coach, then you've got to admit that him not being the coach is a loss for LA.
Yes, and that's why I think they had to do it different this year to what they did last year.
I agree with that. So I think it's going to be a really interesting season for LA because there's a lot of growth that's happened.
Here's the other thing too, is when you have turnover at the coaching level, especially in Major League Rugby, your roster then dictates what that turnover does more than probably other professional comps in the world, because the infrastructure and the structure varies from year to year already in MLR because it's in its infancy. Still, coaches can have an influence on the style of play, the kind of players coming in, like they recruit, where they've come from, if they've come from overseas. But I think that roster's pretty intact at LA. I think Hoyles is in a great spot. But I don't think they're going to panic if they lose these early games. I think they will lose some early games to kind of figure out their new identity and who they're going to be. But I still think they'll be there when the chips are all in the middle of the table.
Well,
I think New England can beat them then.
So do you think this is a more important game for New England? Do you think this is a marker for New England?
I do.
New coach,
because I know players from last year there really wanted another shot at LA. They felt like that round one game, a couple of things went against them with cards and whatnot. And they felt that they have LA's measure. And then to go and sit and watch LA have the season they do and win it all, people in New England kind of sat back and said, we can beat them. There's a belief out in New England that they can beat LA, in LA. And I think sometimes belief is a powerful thing. Bodine Walker is the form player in the comp right now, and he's the kind of guy that will ride that confidence into this game going up against Matt Giteau. Like, you ask, like, Bodine's had a great career himself, but you ask Bodie, like, do you ever think you'd be running out in the Coliseum against Matt Giteau? He's probably say no if he's being honest, but now he's got that opportunity in a game that gets eyeballs all over the world. And if he has aspirations of going back and playing Super Rugby, this could be
the chance.
Big shot, man. It's a big shot. I don't know. I just have this feeling that New England's got something for them this weekend. I could be wrong. You watch LA put 60 on them, but I'm going to go New England on the road here for an upset win. Just on the back
and I'm going to go just to be different and to help you continue to stretch ahead of me on Super Brew. I will go with LA. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think LA might have a little bit too much for this young New England side who had a lot of turnover in the pack, right? So a lot of the backs are back, but there's quite a bit of turnover in the pack. I like the idea of like stepping up. I think LA has a target on their back, and so I think New England will come in there. I think it's going to be close. I can see New England winning this, but I'm just going to choose LA so I can bring that up next week with all of your Australian buddies out there.
I actually totally forgot that LA is powered by Body Science as well. I'm on the hydroxyburn shred right now thanks to Body Science. I've never looked better. Take a look at these cannons, folks. Look at this. Let me pull the right one out. It's the smaller of the two. Jesus, it's like smuggling Idaho potatoes in there, all thanks to Body Science. There you go, Pico. Got done. Cash. No, just kidding. All right, Pete. We'll have fun this weekend. Where are you headed? You doing the Houston game? You going to Texas? Or
I'm in Indianapolis. So I've got 2 games on Saturday in Indy. I was supposed to do the Sunday game, but works like I'm traveling too much, and that would be like leave Friday, come back Monday, and MLR was kind enough to let me not do the Sunday game. So I've got those 2 games on Saturday, but excited to do it. First time to Indy to see Kyle and the Tupelo guys.
Oh, mate, Kyle's my boy. That guy is one of the greats. So give him a hug for me. A long, creepy, lingering hug. Thanks, Pete.
All right, I'll definitely do that. But like especially creepy in COVID times, but I'll definitely do it.
Yeah, just even creepier. I love it. All right, that wraps us up for another show for the Professor Pete Steinberg, Aaron Castro, Brian Ginty, and our entire team at Major League Rugby. I'm Dan Powell. We'll catch you next week. Enjoy the games this weekend, and MLR just keeps growing. Love it.